Yeah, thank you so much. And I'll second, it's a huge honor to be on this panel with all of you. Um, so first I'll just say a little background about DuMOL. So Sonoma Winery started in the 90s. The name comes from the original owner's children named Duncan and Molly. That's where we got our name. And yeah, being the first California producer here, you can taste in these last three wines, you can start to taste that California sunshine. You know, they have a little bit darker fruits, a little more fruit forward, so you can taste the kind of shift. But like Eric said, it's still a cool region. And I think when you think California, a lot of people think Napa at first, and Napa's a much warmer region, and that's because of a couple things. The Pacific, the mountains, and the fog. And so the driver of all of our climate is that big, giant, freezing Pacific Ocean that we have. This morning I went and enjoyed your guys' coastline, and it's just night and day. You know, you guys have the soft little waves and manatees floating by. And if any of you have been to the California Sonoma coast, it is rustic and rugged, and it's cold, and you need a puffy coat at all year, and it's rocky, and it's freezing. You need a wetsuit, and then it's still freezing all year round. So that really drives our climate. And then you've heard a lot about plate tectonics. You know, that's why we have earthquakes sometimes out there. There's a lot of plate activity, and that's why it gave us all of these different interesting little ridge lines. And then we've got the giant Mayacamas Mountains that separates Sonoma from Napa. And that's what stops a lot of this kind of cool Pacific coastal weather from going to Napa. So that's why Sonoma can be quite cool. And then a huge driving factor is the fog. And it's hard to kind of wrap your head around the fog unless you've come and seen it. It's got a name. It's called Carl. It is thick, and it's literally like a blanket that rolls in. And it's not super intuitive that closer to the coast is going to be foggier because there's different elevations, there's different little pockets, and the fog gets sucked in these weird, interesting ways. So the fog is really the driver to specifically our wine's cool climateness. And it's drastic. It rolls in at, you know, early evening. It's thick, and it burns off maybe around 10 or 11 a.m. in the morning once the sunshine comes out, and then we get that, you know, bright, dry California sunshine. But if in, you know, the growing season, when you're out there sampling, tasting the grapes, you walk through the vines, it can be dripping wet. You can get wet from all that fog. And so that really keeps the nights really cool. So even though we get sunshine during the day, and I think you can taste that in these wines, we get really nice, cool nights. And so that kind of freezes the grapes, stops them from ripening. And so you're able to get kind of more fruit in the wines from the sunshine, but then you retain a bunch of acidity from those nice, cool nights. And so the wine we brought today is our 2018 Wildrose DuMOL. This is the first estate that we ever planted in the 90s. It's at a very low-lying point in an area called the Green Valley, which is in that kind of southwest corner of the Russian River. So I like to think of it as coastal Russian River. Russian River is a really big AVA, and you can go up north, and because of that different kind of ridge lines, it can become much warmer. You can have no fog, and that's where you can get really kind of ripe, more kind of cinnamon-flavored Pinot Noirs. But then if you get into little foggy, more coastal influence pockets, you can get these more cool climate, you know, those more crunchy, high-acid expressions of Pinot Noir. So this is in a particularly low-lying spot, which you oftentimes think, oh, low-lying's valley floor, you're going to get warmth, but it's not, because we get all that fog. So the fog gets sucked in from the Bodega Bay. It's really warm in the Central Valley of California. It's super cold in the Pacific, and that temperature difference just sucks in all this fog. So it comes and it just sits in this vineyard. So it's one of our latest Pinot Noirs we pick. So the grapes actually have quite a long, I know John talked about condensed. We actually have quite a long growing season. So from when the vines come out of dormancy at the end of winter to when we pick them. The grapes are actually take a long time to mature. So you tend to get, you can get a little bit more tannin almost on the wines. We get tiny little berries that are quite intense, but at a very kind of low pH, which means high acid. And so it's kind of a yin and yang in that way of expression. And this site is planted all to Dijon clones. It's an organic vineyard. It's always been organic. We don't till the soil there. And importantly, I think we dry farm, which means we don't irrigate, which doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but it's very hard to do in California because we don't get any rain during the growing season. It wouldn't be rare to get 0 precipitation from February until November, nothing. So it's really hard to grow a crop like that. But why, and we get a lot, right now, it's very nice being here because we are getting what they call an atmospheric river at home. So the rain is here. We got like, some of the Sonoma Mountains, we got 10 inches in a day, and it's been raining for like 3 days. So it's good, but it's nice to be in Miami. But yeah, so we dry farm. So why we're able to do this is, one, we kind of trained the vines to be able to do this. And then the soils, which there's kind of some similarity, the area where we grow grapes also used to be a little inland sea about 5 million years ago. And again, as those plates shifted, it emptied into the Pacific, and we're left with these really beautiful kind of lifted marine soils as well. But at this site, there's this little vein of clay, and like John said, clay tends to be able to hold some water, so it's able to hold on to that winter rain, kind of dose it out to the vine throughout the growing season, and so we're able to get through the whole growing season without adding any water to the vines. And we don't do that on every vineyard, just the sites that we can. And we like doing that because you tend to get a little bit more concentration in the grapes, tend to get a little bit smaller berries, and it helps keep the vines very balanced. These vines, typically you have to kind of cut off the tops of the vines as they're growing, but these just kind of grow to the perfect height you want. We don't really need to drop any fruit. It's kind of just a nice, very balanced site. We fondly call it the secret garden. It's a very gorgeous little 2-acre plot with, beautiful sweet peas growing everywhere. It's just a nice little spot. And we, similarly, which maybe this is a cool climate trend, we also use whole cluster on here. So maybe there's something that with cool climate just marrying well with those little spicy floral notes that you can get with fermenting whole cluster. So we do about 1/3 whole cluster. We age it for 15 months, and then we bottle it, unfiltered, unfined. Just, I think all of us probably have very similar winemaking, and it's neat just tasting just pure vineyard expressions, which I think is why we all probably love Pinot Noir.
Totally. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So the next portfolio for me